over the goodly number of years now, the conservative part of the country have been aiming at what they wanted to accomplish in public policy, but didn't want to expose their hands or talk directly to it. The liberal and moderate side of the political equation didn't want to talk about some of these problems either, particularly Social Security, because they didn't control the votes capable of rendering a decision. It requires a cooperative effort politically in this system. A majority in Congress by either party, either in the House or in the Senate, will not make the necessary corrections, because if they were to do that singularly without compromise and without agreement, it would be destructive to either one of the parties to the point they disappear from the landscape. You'd have to form new parties because the brand name would be so ruptured and destroyed. That's why I'm telling you, the next 2 years are very frightful years. Nothing's going to happen unless there's going to be a change, a fundamental political, structural change in the country. I don't think that's going to happen either. What really has to be done is, and what this election is all about, is let's clear away the fog. The smoke screen. The smoke screen, let's get rid of the arguing about the mosque in New York. It doesn't mean really anything of substance to the problems facing the country. And yet we're spending an inordinate amount of time talking about that, reporting on it, oh my heavens. You know, what does it have to do with the people that we talked about? What does that have to do with your business? Is anybody going to be hired or fired here because they build or they don't build a mosque in New York? Hell no. The only thing about bringing that mosque in is we don't have to face or talk about the important issues. And if it wasn't the mosque, it was gay marriage. And if it wasn't gay marriage, it's a right to life. And I mean, there's 1,000 issues out there that will cloud our minds from facing real issues. The real issue is, if you're going, since we've blown our chance to balance the budget and pay off the debt as the Clinton plan had allowed us to do if we stayed on it, what are we going to do in the future? And we've got to decide. Are we going to make up the shortfall in Social Security by increased revenues? And if so, who will those revenues come from? Or are we going to do it by cutting benefits and privatizing Social Security? Quite frankly, the Republican leadership have already told us what they intend to do. They intend not to raise revenues, and that's why they're going, again, with renewing the Bush revenue scheme, where it drives us much further into the hole. They're going to go for cutting Social Security, and they're going to do it by privatizing Social Security. And they're going to do the same thing in Medicare. There's no question about that. Paul Ryan's a very honest guy. He's the ranking member of the Budget Committee. He's put out the format, exactly what they want to do. John Boehner, the Republican leader, who will be the Speaker if they take the majority in the House, he said we're going to do several things, including raise the retirement age to 70. And if you do those various things, you will correct the Social Security inadequacy. The only problem that you'll also do is we'll further exacerbate the proportion of income expended by certain factors of our economy. And you know, and most people are not sufficiently aware of how the law works or how Social Security works. You know, I had a very sophisticated young businessman yesterday that debated me in a men's room. We occasionally do that. You know, you can make a real argument. As long as he doesn't get on my blind side, we're okay. But anyway, he kept on asking me, "Where's the lockbox? Where's the lockbox?" You know, and it's very true. And don't take me wrong. I've used the expression a lockbox, okay, because it's an effort to explain that you can't keep drawing funds out of somewhere and expect them to remain there. But there never was and never will be a lockbox. Monies cannot be held in storage somewhere. They have to be invested. And all we do is exchange the excess money that comes into the Social Security system and sell it to the government, who pledges the full faith and credit of the United States government to make those obligations secure. And so when you say if there's no lockbox, you're no more insecure than if you don't trust the United States government. It's very fundamental. Are the people starting to believe that they're going to allow the United States government to default on their debt? I mean, some people could make that legitimate argument. If that's the case, we're seriously in trouble. Because if that's the case and people accept that, they will have lost full faith and confidence in the United States dollar and the United States government, and our economy, the position of our government, and the position of the world will be fundamentally compromised when that happens. Now, But here's a very sophisticated young man that I was arguing with that if I'd said to him, oh, we're going to construct the lockbox and we're going to make it all safe, he would have said, oh, I wanted to hear somebody say that. Now that's the real conservative position. It's the damnedest false, stupid position. Now, when I say stupid, I'm not saying people are stupid. I'm saying that we have lost our ability to explain the complications of government, because it is very, very, very complicated. And many people think that one action that drives a response is directly responsible for that response, and it isn't necessarily so. These things are very interconnected and interrelated. I catch that problem when I worked on regulatory reform. You know, everybody wants a simple answer. What caused the crash? Well, man, you know, we've got some of the finest minds in the world working on that for years already. I have the stack of books I have that relate what potentially caused it. Some people are simple enough to say, oh, everybody knows community reinvestment caused it. Oh, that's great. I mean, you know, take me to the wall. Put me out of my pain if you think that had any effect at all on bringing about the crash. Other people say, well, everybody knows Fannie and Freddie. Well, Fannie and Freddie were actionable in creating the secondary market and securitization deals within the secondary market. But you don't think that there was some organization in Washington named Fannie and Freddie that said we were going to tear the American economy apart. It's ridiculous. The thing that caused it is the thing that causes all disasters in economic history of the United States with the capitalist system. The capitalist system is a self-energizing, destructive system. It always, it's just, what's the term in radiation? It's critical. It always goes critical. That's where it drives for. That's what makes it dynamic and what makes it a very growing, very responsible system that constantly has to be worked on to be contained so it doesn't go critical. But on the other hand, it doesn't lose its heat, its fire, its energy. And that's why we spawn new ideas, new processes, new inventions. That's what's great about the capital system, but not unfettered. Unfettered, it will blow you apart, just like a nuclear bomb. So we're always faced with that constant reality. Well, what caused these things? What caused them? Greed, irresponsibility, letting people run. I can almost trace it with you. Once we took in 2004 and 2005, we contained and took the government, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, quasi-government, government-sponsored enterprises, out of the equation of being in the secondary market and buying these subprime mortgages. Those subprime mortgages went to Wall Street. And you talk about getting critical and getting irresponsible. Wall Street went ape. Wall Street sent out the word, anybody who wants to buy anything, sign them up, send us the paper, because we've got these dipheads in Europe that'll buy that stuff because they think it's backed by the United States government. And of course, Fannie and Freddie were not backed by the United States government, but by implication, a lot of people thought they were. And that gave credibility to this idea that all securitization of mortgages were going to be ultimately supported by the United States government. And were they? Yeah. Why? Why did that happen? Because we had one idiot insurance company that had federal products. One corporation in a conglomeration of 4,000 corporations, an AIG, went over to London, set up an outfit, had no assets. They got into the derivative markets, and they took counterparty positions to $2.8 trillion without any assets supporting their counter positions. They were in great shape. They were making a fortune, one of the largest profit makers in the whole AIG market, as the market was going up. Once the market started to flounder at the top and started to go down, they couldn't cover their positions. Now, we were faced with the government. Well, should we let them go? 400 people involved, $2.8 trillion, that's a lot of money. What would happen if we let them go? The consensus of the 40 best economists that I had met and have met and know, most of Nobel Prize winners, said, if you don't support these systems, if you don't show that the government's going to move in and make sure the system doesn't collapse, it not only will collapse the American economy, it will collapse the world economy. So your choice is find some way to rescue that. We're somewhat faced with that same sort of, on the one hand, something that appear to be simplistic in how we solve this problem, or how we understand this problem, or we determine what caused this problem, as to, you know, how we can correct the problem. My own position is I'm probably more optimistic than all of you here. We're fortunate enough to live in the strongest economy in the world, the best economy in the world, no question about it. The American economy has proven things for years, its capacity to innovate, change, revolutionize things to the extent, and to the jealousy of the world, no question about that. And we've developed a sophisticated financial system that in most times have really worked. But history has shown us every 20 years we have a crisis, a financial crisis, that going to critical mass, that when we can't responsibly understand that there are warnings out there that critical things are about to happen, and we don't have a mechanism to rein them in, they get out of hand, they go critical, and they cause a financial crisis. What's the history? 200 years of American history, and we've had about 10 of these crises. Every 20 years, practically, we have a crisis. That's exactly what.
Questions from the group on the economic realm? Because you mentioned something I wanted to talk about. You mentioned that the necessity for a cooperative effort in governance, and that's critical. But I think the opposition to the Health Care Act would say that was an instance where there wasn't really cooperation among parties.
Oh, there was a tremendous request for cooperation. It was, you have to understand, there was a determined effort after Obama was elected that they lost a fantastic legislative defeat. And they said, if we cooperate with Obama administration policies or the majority in the House, it will remain there for 10, 20 years, particularly if they solve some of the very serious problems in our economy, one being health care. So the determination was, thou shalt not cross the line and support certain basic things. One of them, health care.
So what happens when your opponent, for instance, in this race has said, the first thing I will do when I get to Washington is vote to defund the health care bill? What's your response to that?
Well, since it's taken 45 years, well, no, it's taken 60 years since Harry Truman to get a credible bill put together where we could get at least a majority vote on. That's a commitment to reverse 60 years of an attempt. Now, I can't fault it. That is a philosophical and an ideological position that I could defend intellectually, either side of, except I happen to come down on the side that the wealthiest nation, industrial nation in the world, the only being without a national health system of any sort, is not meeting the measure that we should meet, and that we can, in fact, afford to put a system together that will work. We probably have the obligation to do that. And although we all kid ourselves, the quality of our health system is pretty lacking, considering the fact that we spend so much more than almost every other industrial nation in the world. And they, to a large extent, they have better systems. Now, I know we have all these nasty stories about Canada and England. I've been to those systems. That's a lot of baloney. You talk to the doctors that really involve themselves in international medicine. There are 46, 47 million people in the United States that are one sickness, one disease away from catastrophe. And some of our serious problems, and we now have a captive society. I like my opponent's view. Why doesn't he tell the young lady that has breast cancer and is married, whose coverage is on her husband's policy, that her husband now is captured by whoever he works for at that given time? Under our existing law, he can never change his job because his wife will not have coverage for a pre-existing condition. And you know, that's not to be humorous. That's 20% of our population are absolutely locked in their positions. Anybody that has a student in college, I had my daughter when she finished school. At 21, it's very difficult for them to get health coverage, and yet they have a chance of needing it if they get a catastrophic effect. Now we've cured that problem. We said that the carrier has to add that kid on until they're 26 years of age. What's wrong with that? We've said that immediately taking place, children are going to be covered that are previously denied coverage because of pre-existing conditions. They're covered. Now, what will all that mean?